Ballard Morrill, and today we have our guest host, Angela Giampolo. She is with Giampolo Law Group and also a blogger with phillygaylawyer.com. Angela, great to have you here.
Thank you. So this is a continuation of a series that Lorraine Ballard Morrill and I are doing on LGBT issues. And in the studio with us today, we have Gloria Casarez, the Director of LGBT Affairs for the City of Philadelphia.
Hi, Angela.
How are you?
Great.
So that sounds like an awesome job. Is it as awesome as it sounds?
It is. It is the first Office of LGBT Affairs for the City of Philadelphia. It was established in 2008 by Mayor Michael Nutter, who has a long relationship and track record, legislative track record, when he came into office, work with LGBT communities.
So do other cities, other mayors have LGBT advisors?
There are a few cities, and I think more and more cities are recognizing the need for that. Under the street administration, we had a point person who worked on LGBT issues, primarily around the social services. I think the difference between then and now is that we're still obviously working on high-need social service areas, but we're also looking at policy development. We're looking at economic development. So we're broader, I think, than we have been before, and the real benefit in having a role or an office like this is that you have a central point of communication. So I'm a central resource internally within city government, offices that need assistance or that want to be doing things, and externally with the community who needs things.
And how did this role actually come about when Mayor Nutter's administration came into being?
Yeah, so the mayor was asked, of course, while he was campaigning, would he continue the role that had existed under the street administration? And he said, absolutely, of course. It remained to be seen what that would mean. You know, folks didn't have a clear sense about would it be the same? Would it be expanded? The mayor expanded the role by creating an office of LGBT affairs as opposed to a point person, establishing that role and function by executive order. The role had existed before, but it just existed. So there wasn't an executive order behind it. He moved the position into the mayor's office. And so I'm truly an advisor to the mayor on all things LGBT. We come up in so many different areas. It's not just the sort of obvious areas of maybe DHS or housing or health. We come up in so many other areas. Well, as I said, economic development has been a big component that the city has just never been involved in, right? So we have a downtown corridor, businesses, restaurants, and clubs that have been steadily growing in the downtown area. The Midtown Village, neighborhood area has been growing over the last 10 years. We really need at this point for that part of town to do well, right? It's in the footsteps of the convention center, the footsteps of City Hall. Especially with this convention center expansion, it's one of the first places that people are going to hit in our city. And especially with the construction going on the west side of City Hall, folks are almost funneled down 13th Street. So we need that area to do well. And one of the things that we've seen is that the restaurants there are thriving, the stores that are open during the day are thriving, and the nightclubs are thriving. It's always been known as an evening area where you can go and hang out. But now what we see is it's a total day area. And so and those businesses have largely done that on their own. And so the great thing for us is that we can come in at a point of stability and support them in other ways.
And you've been in the role now how long?
It actually just turned 5 years. The Office of LGBT Affairs is 5 years old as of July 1.
So in terms of nationwide, other mayors adopting this role, you now having been in it for 5 years, objectively, what would you say the value of the role that you bring into the administration?
Well, obviously, being available right for the mayor as an advisor, there have been a number of high-profile cases that have come up that advise the mayor to advise city government. I think all of our departments understand what they don't do well, and they understand what they need to know more about. Some of our departments have done full LGBT assessments, and so they're looking at our work from the inside out at every stage of access that a person might interact with us. And so in those departments, they know exactly what they need, and so I can just assist them, right? In other areas, perhaps areas that have been less forward thinking on these issues, sometimes we have to nudge them. And so place in the mayor's office, we can nudge effectively, right? And we can also bring in a lot of support.
So personally, I think that your role is really an evolution of progressiveness that Philadelphia has shown for decades. Talk a little bit about Philadelphia's history on LGBT issues?
Yeah, I mean, just on the point of progressiveness, I think that the city, we see that LGBT people have a stake in every aspect of the city. It's not so much progressive. We know that the LGBT people come in all sizes, colors, stripes, and identity. For example, when we had economic downturn and we were getting calls around, well, gay kids go to the library. So what is this? And we're going to close the libraries, right? So what is that going to mean? My response was, do you put out your trash? Because I put out my trash. And so this trash issue is an LGBT issue too, right? And so, really, I think challenging folks to think outside of what we think we know about LGBT people, because there's a lot more that we care about. There's many, many things that we care about.
In terms of Philadelphia's steep history, decade-long history on LGBT issues.
Right. So where we are now is that Philadelphia has the strongest civil rights law in the nation. And that is amazing to be a part of that. Going back 31 years ago was the first substantial piece of legislation that we have, which is a package of bills that were sort of in quotation marks called the Gay Rights Bill. And that established the city's non-discrimination policy on sexual orientation. That was in 1982. Right. So that's 31 years ago. Right. 2002. So it's 20 years later, we adopted the same policy as it relates to gender identity. And so we have gender identity and sexual orientation protections in place for a long time. And that applies to public accommodations, housing, and employment. Those are the earliest pieces of legislation that we have. In 1998, we added domestic partner benefits for city employees, and we established the city's Life Partnership Program, which is our relationship recognition. Basically, it is the strongest, most affirmative thing we can do to recognize same-sex couples without violating state law. And then in recent years, and in fact, just this past year, we passed an LGBT equality bill, which added, among many provisions, but one of the key provisions of that bill was transgender healthcare, removing the transgender healthcare exclusions from the city health plan. So that means that city employees will be able to access their health care that they work for equally, and that is very important.
The HRC Human Rights Campaign has historically done indexes in order to rate companies. Mm-hmm. And just recently, as of last year, they put forward an index to also rate municipalities. Yeah. In Philadelphia, scored 109, right? So talk a little bit about why and what do you think in terms of this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reports, the Municipal Equality Index that the HRC did, it was their first year that they did it. So, we couldn't influence. We didn't know that they were doing it until after it was done. And when we got our preliminary score, there were some things that they missed. And so we kind of added in a few extra things. We're exceptionally proud of our high score there. We think it really does reflect the work that we've done on the government level. That index ranks municipalities on law and policy. Right. So it's not like this is the LGBT friendly city, right? It's not about friendliness. It's about law and policy. If something happens to you, what can you do about it? And so for us, in working in law and policy, it's a real honor to have our work reflected so well. And so we were the second highest scorer in the nation. And we were the only city that scored a perfect 100 on the non-bonus questions, like the standard questions. And so we know that there were still things that we didn't have in place last year, including the healthcare benefits for transgender employees. And then there's a number of things that they look at the state that you're in. And so we scored the highest score of any city that does not have statewide protections. And so that really, I think, speaks to the work that we have to do across the state.
So personally, in your 5 years, what's your favorite, best project that you've worked on or most personally rewarding?
It's really interesting because I think now is the time I think that we have to start to tell the story, right? And the real story is that there's amazing work happening in our city departments. I can't point to one thing, right? But I've worked with great people in the police, in DHS, and behavioral health that are really, really, really focused on improving our work towards LGBT folks. I've worked with these departments on their policies. Obviously, we're doing some legacy projects, right? I think the John Anderson Senior Housing Project is, hugely significant. That will be a legacy project for my time here in the city and certainly for the mayor. But I think the real change is what's happening within government, within the laws and how we're applying these policies, how we're really, looking at within the departments, what does this mean? How will this play out with a transgender youth who needs to access services? How will this play out with a lesbian mom? Really kind of gaming out what those scenarios of our lives are into practical needs that folks have with the city.
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you a bit about DOMA. And as you know, the lead plaintiff, Edie Windsor, Philly, born and raised, Temple alum, the Big T.
Go Edie.
Right. So does the city of Philadelphia have any plans to honor Edie?
We need to honor Edie. I mean, she's a hometown girl. And Philadelphia was a less awesome place to be when she was living here and when she was raised here. Definitely need to show her some hometown love. And so, I'm already thinking of it. We're going to work on it. And we definitely have to honor her. She changed history. She changed the lives of, every LGBT couple that will come. And so this is a significant achievement.
Gloria, if LGBT individuals or really anyone wants to contact the Office of LGBT Affairs, how do they go about doing that?
So I'm located right in City Hall in room 225. So you can come there. The desk line is 215-686-2194. And I am all over Facebook. Please look for us. And, I try to be out there as much as I can in the community.
Well, we've been talking with Gloria Casarez, the Director of LGBT Affairs from the City of Philadelphia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I'm Angela Giampolo. You can follow more about what I'm doing at phillygaylawyer.com.